and offered him loving affection. Krishna withdrew Karsanam, both Kaliya's offense against the Lord's devotee Garuda and that against the residents of Vrindavana, who were very dear to him. Text 65:7. Kaliya worshipped the Lord of the universe by offering him fine garments, along with necklaces, jewels, and other valuable ornaments, wonderful scents and ointments, and a large garland of lotus flowers. Having thus pleased the Lord, whose flag is marked with the emblem of Garuda, Kaliya felt satisfied. Receiving the Lord's permission to leave, Kaliya circumambulated him and offered him obeisances. Then, taking his wives, friends, and children, he went to his island in the sea. The very moment Kaliya left, the Yamuna was immediately restored to her original condition. Free from poison and full of nectarian water. This happened by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was manifesting a human-like form to enjoy his purpose. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur has commented extensively on this verse. To explain the word manibi, Kaliya worshipped the Lord with jewels. The Acharya has quoted from the Sri Radha Krishna Ganodesa Deepika by Rupa Goswami as follows. Kostubak Kyo Maniryena Pravisya Pradam Oragam Kaliya Prevasi Brinda Hastair Atmo Bahari Taha. The Lord had made his Kostuba gem enter the serpent's lake, and then he arranged for it to be presented to himself by the hands of Kaliya's wives. In other words, because Lord Krishna wanted to act just like an ordinary human being, he made the transcendental Kostuba gem invisible and caused it to enter within Kaliya's treasury. Then, when the appropriate moment came for Kaliya to worship the Lord with many different jewels and ornaments, the serpent's wives, unaware of the Lord's transcendental trick, presented him with the Kostuba gem, thinking it was simply one of the jewels in their possession. The Acharya has further commented that the reason Lord Krishna is described in this verse as Garuda Dvaja, he whose flag is marked by the symbol of his carrier Garuda, is that Kaliya also desired to become Lord Krishna's carrier. Garuda and the serpents are originally related as brothers, and therefore Kaliya wanted to indicate to Lord Krishna, if you ever have to go to a distant place, You should also think of me as your personal carrier. I am the servant of your servants, and in the wink of an eye, I shall travel hundreds of millions of yojanas. Thus, the Puranas narrate that in the course of Lord Krishna's eternal cycle of pastimes, when Kamsa orders the Lord to come to Mathura, he sometimes goes there mounted upon Kalia. Thus ends the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 10th canto, 16th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Krishna Chastises the Serpent Kaliya. Chapter 17, The History of Kaliya. This chapter describes how Kaliya left the island of the snakes and how the sleeping residents of Vrindavana were saved from a forest fire. When King Parikshit inquired about Kaliya's leaving Ramanaka Island, the abode of the serpents, and about why Garuda acted inimically toward him, Sri Sukadeva Goswami replied as follows. All the serpents on the island were afraid of being devoured by Garuda. To placate him, every month they would leave various offerings for him at the foot of a banyan tree. But Kaliya, puffed up as he was with false pride, would eat these offerings himself. Hearing of this, Garuda became furious and went to kill Kaliya, whereupon the snake began biting the great bird. Garuda fiercely beat him with his wing, sending Kaliya fleeing for his life to a lake adjoining the Yamuna River. Prior to the above incident, Garuda had once come to the Yamuna and started eating some fish. Sobari Rishi had tried to stop him, but Garuda, agitated by hunger, had refused to heed the sage's prohibitions. And in a response, the sage had cursed Garuda that if he ever came to there again, he would immediately die. Kaliya had heard of this, and thus he lived there without fear. In the end, however, he was driven out by Sri Krishna. When Lord Balarama and all the residents of Vrindavana saw Sri Krishna rise up out of the lake, beautifully decorated with many different gems and ornaments, they embraced him in great pleasure. The spiritual masters, priests, and learned brahmanas then told Nanda Maharaja, the king of the cowherds, that although his son had been caught in the grips of Kaliya, it was by the king's good fortune that he was now free again. Because the people of Vrindavana were quite worn out by hunger, thirst, and fatigue, they spent that night on the banks of the Yamuna. In the middle of the night, a fire happened to blaze up within the forest, which had become dry during the hot season. As the fire surrounded the sleeping inhabitants of Vrindavana, they suddenly awoke and rushed to Sri Krishna for protection. Then the unlimitedly powerful Lord Shri Krishna, seeing his dear relatives and friends so distressed, immediately swallowed up the terrible forest fire. Text number 1. Having thus heard how Lord Krishna chastised Kaliya, King Parikshit inquires, why did Kaliya leave Ramanaka Island, the abode of the serpents? And why did Garuda become so antagonistic toward him alone? Text 2 and 3. Sukadeva Goswami said to avoid being eaten by Garuda, the serpents had previously made an arrangement with him whereby they would each make a monthly offering of tribute at the base of a tree. Thus, every month, on schedule, O mighty armed King Parikshit, each serpent would duly make his offering to that powerful carrier of Vishnu as a purchase of protection. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Sridhara Swami has given an alternate explanation of this verse. Upaharyai may also be translated as by those who are to be eaten, and Sarpa Janai also, Sarpa Janai, as those human beings who were dominated by or who belonged to the serpent race. According to his reading, a group of human beings had fallen under the control of the serpents and were prone to be eaten by them. To avoid this, the human beings would make a monthly offering to the serpents, who in turn would offer a portion of that offering to Garuda so that he would not eat them. The particular translation given above is based on the commentary of Srila Sanatana Goswami and the translation by Srila Prabhupada in his Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In any case, all the acharyas agree that the serpents purchased protection from Garuda. Text number 4. Although all the other serpents were dutifully making offerings to Garuda, one serpent, the arrogant Kaliya, son of Kadru, would eat all these offerings before Garuda could claim them. Thus, Kaliya directly defied the carrier of Lord Vishnu. Text 5. O king, the greatly powerful Garuda, who is very dear to the Supreme Lord, became angry when he heard of this. Desiring to kill Kaliya, he rushed toward the serpent with tremendous speed. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Sanatana Goswami explains that the word Mahavega indicates that the great speed of Garuda cannot be checked by anyone. Text number 6. As Garuda swiftly fell upon him, Kaliya, who had the weapon of poison, raised his numerous heads to counteract, showing his ferocious tongues and expanding his horrible eye. Kaliya then bit Garuda with the weapons of his fangs. Oh my God, it's terrible. Purport. The Acharyas explained that Kaliya used his weapon of poison at a distance by spitting venom upon his enemy and at short range by biting him with his terrible fangs. Text number 7. The angry son of Tarxia moved with overwhelming speed in repelling Kaliya's attack. That terribly powerful carrier of Lord Madhusudana struck the son of Kadru with his left wing, which shone like gold. Text number 8. Beaten by Garuda's wing, Kaliya was extremely distraught, and thus he took shelter of a lake adjoining the river Yamuna. Garuda could not enter this lake. Indeed, he could not even approach it. Text number 9. In that very lake, Garuda had once desired to eat a fish. Fish being, after all, his normal food. Although forbidden by the sage Sobari, who was meditating there within the water, Garuda took courage and, feeling hungry, seized the fish. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sukadeva Goswami is now explaining why Garuda could not approach the lake in the Yamuna River. It is the nature of birds to eat fish, and thus, by the arrangement of the Lord, the great bird Garuda does not commit any offense by nourishing himself with fish. Okay, 1 second. On the other hand, Sobari Muni's forbidding a much greater personality to eat his normal food did constitute an offense. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Sobari committed 2 offenses. First, he dared to give an order to a supremely exalted soul, the soul, like Garuda. And second, he obstructed Garuda from satisfying his desire. Text number 10. Seeing how the unfortunate fish in that lake had become most unhappy at the death of their leader, Sobari uttered the following curse under the impression that he was mercifully acting for the benefit of the lake's residents. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that when our so-called compassion does not tally with the order of the Supreme Lord, it merely causes a disturbance. Because Sobari had forbidden Garuda's coming to that lake, Kaliya moved in and made his headquarters there. And this spelled doom for all the lake's residents. Text 11. If Garuda ever again enters this lake and eats the fish here, he will immediately lose his life. What am I saying? What I am saying is the truth. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Acharyas explained in this regard that because of Sobari Muni's material attachment and affection for a fish, he failed to see the situation from the spiritual viewpoint. The ninth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam describes his fall down for his offense. Because of false pride, Sobari Muni lost his power of austerity and with it his spiritual beauty and happiness. When Garuda came to the Yamuna, Sobari Muni thought, although he may be a personal associate of the Supreme Lord, I will still curse him and even kill him if he disobeys my order. Such an offensive attitude against an exalted Vaishnava will certainly destroy one's auspicious position in life. In the ninth canto, as the ninth canto describes, Sobari Muni married many beautiful women and suffered greatly in their association. But because he had once become glorious by taking shelter of the Yamuna River in Sri Vrindavan, he was ultimately delivered. Text number 12. Of all the serpents, only Kalia came to know of this affair, and in fear of Garuda, he took up residence in the Yamuna lake. Later, Lord Krishna drove him out. Text 13 and 14. Resuming his description of Krishna's chastisement of Kaliya, Sukadeva Goswami continued. Krishna rose up out of the lake wearing divine garlands, fragrances, and garments, covered with many fine jewels and decorated with gold. When the cowherds saw him, they all stood up immediately, just like an unconscious person's senses coming back to life. Filled with great joy, they affectionately embraced him. Interesting. Text 15. Having regained their vital functions, Yasoda, Rohini, Nanda, and all the other cowherd women and men went up to Krishna. O descendant of Kuru, even the dried up trees came back to life. Oh, that's good. Text 16. Lord Balaram embraced his infallible brother and laughed, knowing well the extent of Krishna's potency. Out of great feelings of love, Balarama lifted Krishna up on his lap and repeatedly looked at him. The cows, bulls, and young female calves all achieved the highest pleasure. Text 17. All the respectable Brahmins, together with their wives, came forward to greet Nanda Maharaja. They said to him, your son was in the grips of Kaliya, but by the grace of providence, he is now free. Text 18. The Brahmanas then advised Nanda Maharaja to assure that your son, Krishna, will always be free from danger. You should give charity to the Brahmanas. With a satisfied mind, O king, Nanda Maharaj then very gladly gave them gifts of cows and gold. Ooh, that's the best, uh, best thing that you can do. Text 19. The greatly fortunate mother, Yasoda, having lost her son and then regained him, placed him on her lap. That chaste lady cried constant torrents of tears as she repeatedly embraced him. Text 20. O best of kings, Parikshit, because the residents of Vrindavan were feeling very weak from hunger, thirst, and fatigue, they and the cows spent the night where they were, lying down near the bank of the Kalindi. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Jiva Goswami points out that although the people were weak from hunger and thirst, they did not drink the milk from the cows present there because they feared it had been contaminated by the serpent's poison. The residents of Vrindavan were so overjoyed to get back their beloved Krishna that they did not want to go back to their houses. They wanted to stay with Krishna on the bank of the Yamuna so that they could continuously see him. Thus, they decided to take rest near the riverbank. Text 21. During the night, while all the people of Vrindavan were asleep, a great fire blazed up within the dry summer forest. The fire surrounded the inhabitants of Raja on all sides and began to scorch them. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Sanatana Goswami and Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura have commented that perhaps a loyal friend of Kalia had assumed the form of a forest fire to avenge his friend, or perhaps the forest fire was manifest by a demon who was a follower of Kamsa's. Text 22. Then the residents of Vrindavana woke up, extremely disturbed by the great fire threatening to burn them. Thus, they took shelter of Krishna, the Supreme Lord, who, by his spiritual potency, appeared like an ordinary human being. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Shruti, or Vedic mantras, state Swarupa Bhutaya Nitya Satya Maya Kayaya. The Lord's eternal potency, named Maya, is innate in his original form. Thus, within the eternal spiritual body of the Supreme Lord, there is infinite potency, which effortlessly manipulates all existence according to the omniscient desire of the absolute truth. The residents of Vrindavan took shelter of Krishna, thinking, this blessed boy will certainly be empowered by God to save us. They remembered the words of the sage Gargamuni, spoken at the birth ceremony of Lord Krishna, Anena sarva durgani yuyam unjust tarishyata. By his power, you will easily be able to cross over all obstacles. Bhagavatam 10:8-16. Therefore, the residents of Vrindavana, who had full faith in Krishna, took shelter of the Lord in hopes of being saved from the impending disaster threatened by the forest fire. Text 23. This is very nice words. Krishna Krishna Mahabhaga, Hey Raman Mita Vikrama, Esa Gora Tamo Vanis, Tavakan Grasate Hinaha. Vrindavana's residents said, Krishna, Krishna, O Lord of all opulence, O Rama, possessor of unlimited power. This most terrible fire is about to devour us, your devotees. Text 24. O Lord, we are your true friends and devotees. Please protect us from this insurmountable fire of death. We can never give up your lotus feet, which drive away all fear. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The residents of Vrindavana told Krishna, if this deadly fire overcomes us, we will be separated from your lotus feet, and this is unbearable for us. Therefore, just so that we can go on serving your lotus feet, please protect us. Text 25. Seeing his devotees so disturbed, Sri Krishna, the infinite Lord of the universe and possessor of infinite power, then swallowed the terrible forest fire. Wow. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 10th canto, 17th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The History of Kaliya. Now we're going to chapter 18. Lord Balarama slays the demon Pralamba. The killing of the Pralamba Sura is described in this chapter. While playing happily in Vrindavana, Lord Baladeva climbed up on the shoulders of the demon Pralamba and struck his head with his fist, destroying him. Sri Vrindavana, where Krishna and Balaram enacted their pastimes, was even during the summer decorated with all the qualities of spring. At that time, Lord Sri Krishna would become absorbed in various sports, surrounded by Balarama and all the cowherd boys. One day they were intently dancing, singing, and playing with a demon named Pralamba, entered their midst, disguised as a cowherd boy. The omniscient Lord Krishna saw through the disguise. But even as he thought of how to kill the demon, he treated him as a friend. Krishna then suggested to his young friends and Baladeva that they play a game involving contending parties. Taking the role of leaders, Krishna and Balaram divided the boys into groups and determined that the losers would have to carry the winners on their shoulders. Thus, when Sridama and Rishabha, members of Balarama's party, were victorious, Krishna and another boy in his party carried them on their shoulders. Kalambasura thought that the unconquerable Lord Sri Krishna would be too great an opponent to contend with. So the demon fought with Balarama instead and was defeated. Taking Lord Balarama on his back, Kalambasura began to walk away very swiftly. But Balarama became as heavy as Mount Sumeru, and the demon, unable to carry him, had to reveal his true demoniac form. When Balarama saw this terrible form, he struck the demon with a ferocious blow on the head with his fist. This blow shattered Kalambasura's head, just as lightning bolts hurled by the king of the demigods shatter mountains. The demon repeatedly vomited blood and then fell upon the ground. When the cowherd boys saw Lord Balarama return, they joyfully embraced and congratulated him as the demigods showered garlands of flowers from the heavens and glorified him. Text number 1. Shisuga Uvacha. Ata Krishna Parivito Jnanatibir Muditat Mabi Anugi Yamano Nya Visad Rajam Gokula Manditam. Sukadeva Goswami said, surrounded by his blissful companions, who constantly chanted his glories, Sri Krishna then entered the village of Braja, which was decorated with herds of cows. So nice. Being decorated, having herds of cows that are decorated. Text 2. While Krishna and Balarama were thus enjoying life in Vrindavana in the guise of ordinary cowherd boys, the summer season gradually appeared. This season is not very pleasing to embodied souls. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In chapter 18 of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada comments as follows. The summer season in India is not very much welcome because of the excessive heat. But in Vrindavana, everyone was pleased because summer there appeared just like spring. Text 3. Nevertheless, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead was personally staying in Vrindavana along with Balarama, summer manifested the qualities of spring. Such are the features of the land of Vrindavana. Yeah. Text 4. In Vrindavana, the loud sound of waterfalls covered the cricket's noise, and clusters of trees constantly moistened by spray of those waterfalls beautified the entire area. Purport. This and the following three verses describe how Vrindavana manifested the features of spring even during the summer season. Let's see. That's what happens when Krishna is involved. Text 5. The wind wafting over the waves of the lakes and flowing rivers carried away pollen of many varieties of lotuses and water lilies, and then cooled the entire Vrindavan area. Thus, the residents there did not suffer from the heat generated by the blazing summer sun and seasonal forest fires. Indeed, Vrindavana was abundant with fresh green grass. Oh, just imagine how wonderful that is. Text number 6. When their flowing waves, with their flowing waves, the deep rivers drenched their banks, making them damp and muddy. Thus, the rays of the sun, which were as fierce as poison, could not evaporate the earth's sap or parch its green grass. Text 7. Flowers beautifully decorated the forest of Vrindavan, and many varieties of animals, birds, filled it with sound. The peacocks and bees sang, and the cuckoos and cranes cooed. Text 8. Intending to engage in pastimes, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, accompanied by Lord Balaram, and surrounded by the cowherd boys and cows, entered the forest of Vrindavana as he played his flute. Text number 9. Decorating themselves with newly grown leaves, along with peacock feathers, garlands, clusters of flower buds, and colored minerals. Balaram, Krishna, and their cowherd friends danced, wrestled, and sang. Text number 10. As Krishna danced, some of the boys accompanied by him by singing, and others by playing flutes, hand cymbals, and buffalo horns, while still others praised his dancing. Purport. Wanting to encourage Sri Krishna, some of the cowherd boys openly praised his dancing. Text number 11. O king, the demigods disguised themselves as members of the cowherd community. And just as dramatic dancers praise another dancer, worship Krishna and Balaram, who were also appearing as cowherd boys. Text 12. Krishna and Balarama played with their cowherd boys by the whirling about, leaping, hurling, slapping, and fighting. Sometimes Krishna and Balaram would pull the hair on the boy's head. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Acharyas have explained in this verse as follows. The word Brahmanai indicates that the boys pretending they were machines would sometimes whirl about until they became dizzy. This would also sometimes jump. They would also sometimes jump up about Lunganai. The word kshipai indicates that sometimes they would hurl objects like balls or stones, and that sometimes they would grab each other by the arms and throw one another about. Asphotana means that sometimes they would slap one another's shoulders or backs, and Vikar Sanai indicates they would drag one another about in the midst of their fight. By the word Niyudena, arm wrestling and other types of friendly fighting are indicated. And the word Kaka Paksha Daro means that Krishna and Balarama would sometimes grab their hair on the other boys' heads in a playful manner. Text 13. While the other boys were dancing, O king, Krishna and Balaram would sometimes accompany them with song and instrumental music. And sometimes the two lords would praise the boys, saying, very good, very good. Okay. Sometimes the cowherd boy would play with ilva or kumba fruits, and sometimes with handfuls of fruits, amalaka fruits. At other times, they would play the games of trying to touch one another or of trying to identify somebody while one is blindfolded. And sometimes they would imitate animals and birds. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Sanatan Goswami explains that the word adhyay by other such sports indicates such games as chasing one another and building bridges. Another pastime would occur at noon while Lord Krishna was taking rest. Nearby, the young cowherd girl would be passing by, singing, and Krishna's boyfriends would pretend to inquire from them about the price of milk. Then the boys would steal yogurt and other items from them and run away. Krishna, Balarama, and their friends would also play games in which they would cross the river in boats. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura further explains that the boys would play with fruits by throwing a few in the air and then throwing others to try to hit them. The word Netrabandha indicates a game in which one boy would approach a blindfolded boy from behind and place his palms over the blinding fold, over the blindfolded boy's eyes. Then, simply by the feel of his palms, the blindfolded boy would have to guess who the other boy was. In all such games, the boys put up stakes for the winner, such as flutes or walking sticks. Sometimes the boys would imitate the various fighting methods of the forest animals, and other times they would chirp like birds. Text 15. They would sometimes jump around like frogs, sometimes play various jokes, sometimes ride in swings, and sometimes imitate monarchs. Purport of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura explains the word Nripa Chestaya as follows. In Vrindavan, there was a particular place in the riverbank, on the riverbank, where people who wanted to cross the Yamuna would pay a small tax. At times, the cowherd boys would assemble in this area and prevent the young girls of Vrindavan from crossing the river, insisting that they had to pay a customs duty first. Such activities were full of joking and laughter. Text 16. In this way, Krishna and Balaram played all sorts of well-known games as they wandered among the rivers, hills, valleys, bushes, trees, and lakes of Vrindavan. Wow. Wonderful. Text 17. While Rama, Krishna, and their cowherd friends, were thus tending the cows in the Vrindavana forest, the demon Kalamba entered their midst. He had assumed the form of a cowherd boy with the intention of kidnapping Krishna and Balaram. Ooh, this is terrible. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Having described how Krishna and Balarama acted just like ordinary boys, Sukadeva Goswami will now reveal one of the Lord's transcendental pastimes that is beyond the range of human activity. Okay, this is important. According to Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura, the demon Kalamba disguised himself as a particular cowherd boy who, on that day, had remained at home with duties to perform. Text 18. Since the Supreme Lord Krishna, who had appeared in the Dasara dynasty, sees everything, he understood who the demon was. Still, the Lord pretended to accept the demon as a friend, while at the same time seriously considering how to kill him. Text 19. Krishna, who knows all sports and games, then called together the cowherd boys and spoke as follows. Hey, cowherd boys, let's play now. We will divide ourselves into two even teams. Purport. The word yatam means that Krishna naturally wanted the two teams to be evenly matched so that there would be a good game. In addition to the pleasure of sporting, the purpose of the game was to kill the demon Pralamba. Text 20. The cowherd boys chose Krishna and Balarama as the leaders of the two parties. Some of the boys were on Krishna's side, and others joined Balarama. Text 21. The boys played various games involving carriers and passengers. In these games, the winners would climb up on the backs of the losers, who would have to carry them. Purport. Srila Sanatana Goswami quotes the following relevant verse from the Vishnu Purana 5:9-12. Harinna kridanam namam bala kridan nakam tata pakridata hi te sarve devodvo yugapad utpatam. They then played the childhood game known as Harin Kridana. Harin Akridan. Harin Akridanan, in which each boy paired off with an opponent, and all the boys simultaneously attacked their respective rivals. Text 22. Thus carrying and being carried by one another, and at the same time tending the cows, the boys followed Krishna to a banyan tree known as Bandiraka. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Sanatana Goswami quotes the following verses from Sri Harivamsa, Vishnu Parva 11:18-22, which describes the banyan tree. They saw that the best of all trees, which had many long branches, with its dense covering of leaves, it resembled a cloud sitting on the earth. Indeed, its form was so large that it appeared like a mountain covering half the sky. Many birds with charming blue wings frequented that great tree, whose dense fruits and leaves made it seem like a cloud accompanied by a rainbow, or like a house decorated with creepers and flowers. It spread its broad roots downward and carried upon itself the sanctified clouds. That banyan tree was like the lordly master of all other trees in that vicinity, as it performed the all auspicious functions of warding off the rain and the heat of the sun. Such was the appearance of that Yagrodha tree known as Bandira, which seemed just like the peak of a great mountain. Wow. My dear King Parikshit, when Sri Dhamma, Rishabha, and the other members of Lord Balarama's party were victorious in these games, Krishna and his followers had to carry them. 624. Defeated, the Supreme Lord Krishna carried Sri Dhamma. Bhadrasena carried Rishabha, and Pralamba carried Balarama, the son of Rohini. Purport. One may ask how Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, can be defeated by his boyfriends. The answer is that in his original form, God has a most playful nature and occasionally enjoys submitting to the strength or desire of his loving friends. A father may sometimes playfully fall down on the ground, and when struck by his beloved little child, these acts of love give pleasure to all parties. Thus, Sridhama agreed to ride on the Lord Krishna's shoulders to please his beloved friend, who happened to be Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. See, I think our time is up.
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we'll take this. We'll stop now and hear what's going to happen to the demon of Pralamba Sura. All right, are there any questions or comments? So we're going to start from text 25 tomorrow. Any questions or comments? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Our takeaway for today. What's interesting is that actually Lord Krishna was defeated in this game. So our takeaway for today is the following. My dear King Parikshit, when Sri Dhamma and Rishabha and the other members of Lord Balarama's party were victorious in these games, Krishna and his followers had to carry them. Defeated, the Supreme Lord Krishna carried Sri Dhamma. Vadrasena carried Rishabha, and Pralamba carried Balarama, the son of Rohini. One may ask how Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, can be defeated by his boyfriends. The answer is that in this original, the answer is that in his original form, God has the most playful nature and occasionally enjoys submitting to the strength or the desire of his loving friends. A father may sometimes playfully fall down on the ground, and when struck by his beloved little child, these acts of love give pleasure to all parties. Thus, Sri Dhamma agreed to ride on Lord Krishna's shoulders to please his beloved friend, who happened to be Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so we're going to stop there on text 25. And of course, our takeaway is, I'll just read it again. One may ask how Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, can be defeated by his boyfriend. The answer is that in his original form, God has the most playful nature and occasionally enjoys submitting to the strength or desire of his loving friends. A father may sometimes playfully fall down on the ground when struck by his beloved little child. These acts of love give pleasure to all parties. Thus, Sridama agreed to ride on Lord Krishna's shoulders to please his beloved friend, who happened to be Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, well, we'll stop right there and so that we can hear in more, let's say, um, we can hear the full pastime of Columbus Sura, which is going to be spoken in the next couple of verses. We'll save that for tomorrow.
Haribo.